Hello everyone and welcome to a wonderful game from the Super Chess League organized by Same Raina and Chess-Based India. It's Abhijeet Gupta versus Hikaru Nakamura, and as you might have already heard, it's a very controversial game, but aside from all the controversy, the game itself is actually very enjoyable and, well, just very rich in itself. So without further ado, let's check it out and see why it's so enjoyable. So Gupta with the white pieces opens with d4. We have knight f6 by Hikaru, c4 and e6. We have knight to f3, and now c5, striking against the center here. We have d5 and now b5. Hikaru goes for the Blumenfeld gambit. Similar to the Benko gambit, only you have the inclusion of knight on f3 and this e6 pawn. So it's a little bit different. In the Benko, you can just capture on b5, then capture on a6 if white plays a6. But here, not really. Here, if you capture, black just gets a very nice center. He already played e6, and he's ready to capture on d5. So maybe not the greatest of options. Bishop to g5 is the usual reply here, and now e captures on d5, c captures, and the d6. We have e3, and now the most common move here is a6. Also possible is queen to a5. This has been played in a few games, but Hikaru plays bishop to d7, and it is now, as of move 7, that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Gupta continues. We have knight to c3. The b5 pawn is now nicely defended, so you don't have to worry about it. After we play a6, of course, the bishop also helps with that. And now a4. This is a very good reply to Hikaru's bishop to d7, because the pawn prevents the knight from going to c6. You can't go to d7, you can't go to a6, so a captures on b5 is already a threat, as the rook on a8 is undefended. So b4 can be played, but here knight to e4 is just super annoying. There's no way to avoid white ruining your king's side. Even if bishop to e7, you can still just capture. And now if bishop captures, we're going to pick up this pawn with check, and if pawn captures, you already just ruined black's king side. But here Hikaru has b captures on a4, and this is a very good move, even though it doubles your pawns here. Now you have access to the a5 square with the queen. You don't have to worry about rook covering that square. And now knight to e4 doesn't really do anything. If knight to e4, we simply move the queen. Queen a5 check, and there's not a worry in the world. We're either going to capture the knight, or white has to go back with the knight to block check. So instead, after b captures on a4, bishop to e2, preparing to castle, Hikaru does the same, and Gupta now castles. And now rook to a7 by Hikaru. He wants to play rook to b7 and put pressure along the b file, but also just play this bishop to b5 after rook to b7 to try and consolidate his advantage on the queen side, or so-called advantage. We have e4, grabbing more space in the center, and now Hikaru castles. We have h3 and rook to b7 now, preparing bishop to b5, but also just attacking the b2 pawn, so this has to be defended. Queen to d2, defending this pawn, and now bishop to b5. You could always capture on a4, but it doesn't really do anything. Okay, you're going to grab the pawn back, but then the e4 pawn is weak, so the knight is very important on c3 regarding the e4 pawn. So here we have rook f to e1, and now knight b to d7. Finally, Hikaru gets this knight into the game. Bishop back to f4. We now want to organize our attack on the e5 square. So queen to b8, guarding the e5 square, and now queen to c2. Now putting more pressure on the a4 pawn, but also just defending that e4 pawn twice. So now capturing might even be an idea. We have rook to e8, and now white no longer waits. You could wait a little bit. You could play something like bishop to d1, maybe improve the position, but he goes for e5 right away, and it comes with a certain tactic, because now Hikaru captures on e5. We have knight captures on e5, and now you can't go and just grab the piece. For example, if you play knight captures on e5, bishop captures, and queen captures, then bishop captures on b5 is just winning. Your queen is attacked, the rook here is attacked, and the best thing you can do is simply give up the queen for a rook and the bishop. Queen captures, and now a captures on b5. You get this position where white is better, but you know, for a rapid game, maybe it would be a little bit interesting. You do have these 3 pawns here on the queen side. But okay, after knight captures on e5, Hikaru dodges this with bishop to d6, and now we have knight to c6, attacking Hikaru's queen. Queen to c7, bishop captures on d6, queen captures, and now bishop captures on b5. We have a captures on b5, and now we have rook captures on e8. We have knight captures on e8, and now queen to e2, going after that knight. So knight to c7, and now rook to e1. And now the position is, well, the material is equal, but, sorry, the material is not equal. Hikaru is up a pawn, but white has a very, very strong pressure here, and it's not easy for black to get his pieces into the game. So here, you could grab the d5 pawn, but that's not very good. If you capture on d5, then we simply play knight captures, queen captures, and we go for this, sorry, knight to e7 check, winning black's queen. So after this, rook to e1, king to f8 was played by Hikaru, and now, of course, such things are no longer possible. The knight is not in range to deliver check, but there is something else white can play. This was not played in the game. However, feel free to pause the video here and try to find a move where white could seize incredible advantage while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this very, very difficult idea to spot. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to e4. That's the good stuff. Attack the queen and force the queen to capture the d5 pawn. Of course, you know, the queen doesn't have to capture. The queen could just move, for example, queen somewhere, queen to f4. But the problem is now we have g3. And where does the queen go to? Well, there's not, you don't have all that many squares. You don't even have to play g3. You could capture on c5 right away. g3 is just if you want to further improve your position. But even just capturing here is enough. Because now if the knight captures, we play queen to e7 check, king goes back, and we give up the queen for checkmate. Knight captures, rook captures on e8, and this is now checkmate. So that's the problem with knight to e4. You can't move the queen, but queen captures on d5, loses also to knight to d8. Attacks the rook, and once the rook moves, now we play rook to d1, and you cannot defend your knight. These two squares are covered by the knights, so your only square is f5, but now we play g4, and that's it. The queen moves, we pick up the knight, we win the game. Very, very good stuff. So congratulations to everyone who spotted knight to e4 here, but in the game, queen to e7 check was played, queen captures on e7, and rook captures on e7, attacking the knight here. So knight to e8, now the rook nicely defends the knight, and now knight to e4. But now it's a different story. Here Hikaru plays rook to c7. He wants to play rook c7, move this knight, and trade off the rooks, because this rook is very strong here. But also with rook to c7, you're just threatening to capture this knight, remove the defender of the rook, and pick up the rook. However, b4 was incredibly strong here. There's not much white can do against a3, but it's a rapid game. Keep that in mind always. So rook to c7 with that threat, and now knight to g5, going after the f7 pawn. So now you have to do something about that. Of course, now if you capture here, we're first gonna capture on f7 with check. The rook is now defended, and then after the king moves, we're now gonna capture here, and now white is completely winning. So here after knight to g5, Hikaru played knight d to f6, but also it was in this position that Hikaru received a phone call from his stepfather, and also said, "Someone's calling me, unbelievable." He just muted it, put the phone somewhere else, and then continued playing the game. So here, rook captures on c7 was played, Hikaru recaptured with the knight, and now d6. This is a very dangerous passed pawn, but luckily two knights and the king are very near that pawn. So knight to e6, and now Gupta just trades. We have knight captures, f captures, and now knight to e5, creating a wall here against Hikaru's king. But Hikaru's king is not your biggest concern here. Your biggest concern is this 3-1 advantage on the queen side. So Hikaru, of course, pushes c4. He wants to play c3, eliminate this pawn, and then just advance his passed a pawn to victory. So king f1, Gupta starts improving the position of his king. Now c3. Of course, you have to play this now. The threat is just captures and promoting. So b captures, and now a3. We have d7 threatening d8 queen, but just king to e7. We have knight to c6 check. You have to give up the passed pawn in order to prevent Hikaru's passed pawn from reaching its destination. So king captures, knight to b4 guarding a2, and now knight to d5. Of course, white cannot afford to trade knights, so knight to a2, and now king d6. Now Hikaru just has to bring his king into the game. King e2, we have king to c5, king to d2, and now king to c4. We have king to c2, and now b4. again, you can't afford to trade because if check, of course, the knights get traded off the board, and then you're up a pawn, of course, completely winning. White king will have to block this pawn somehow, and in that time you will pick up all of white's pawns on the king's side, and of course easily win the game. So after b4, we have knight to c1, but it doesn't help. We have b captures on c3, and it was in this position on move 43 that Abhijeet Gupta resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Now Hikaru is completely winning. He's up 2 pawns, and well, let's say we play a move somewhere, we can easily just play knight b4 check, king moves, for example, c2 check, king moves, knight to d3, and that's it. Either the knight moves and then we promote to a queen and win white's knight, or you capture, and then, well, the white king cannot stop those pawns from advancing. And another thing, if you don't want to trade like this, you could play knight to a2 right away, but then again, knight to b4 check. We already said that this is completely winning. Captures, you're up 2 pawns, of course, that's it. So Hikaru won this game during the actual game, but then after the tournament, he continued streaming. He, played some games online, did his stuff, and then he received the information that he is actually being disqualified, that it is not allowed to pick up, or not just pick up, but have any electronic devices around you while playing the games. So maybe he didn't consider this, as this isn't like a very serious tournament. It's not a rated one. So maybe that's why he had his phone there. But, the rules are rules. And even though he won the game, he actually lost the game. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Even when you win, make sure you didn't lose. So that's maybe the moral of the story here. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Patrick Bolin, and I would like to thank Tom Deralo, Nicolas Tatsidis, David Kimura, and John Cousins for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of everything else, and including this that's happening in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your weekend.